Alright, so I did my paper on the effects of recreational cannabis on the academics of college students. A brief history of cannabis use in the United States. One of the first legislative acts to try and regulate cannabis was the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, which made it a lot more difficult for consumers to procure cannabis. Then in 1970, the Controlled Substances Act outlawed cannabis and made it a Schedule I drug in the same category as drugs such as LSD, MDMA, and heroin. And then in 1996, California was the first state to legalize medical cannabis. And in 2012, Colorado and Washington were the first two states to legalize recreational cannabis. And as of 2019, 10 states and Washington, D.C. have now all legalized recreational cannabis for adults over 21 and over. So, the effects of cannabis on the brain. As with any drug, heavier use of cannabis will be associated with more pronounced and impactful effects. Cannabis has shown to have an effect on memory, specifically short-term memory and immediate recall were the most affected. And also cannabis has been shown to affect motivation. Generally in the past, this was just understood that cannabis is a demotivating drug that makes the user lazy. However, new research has suggested that while cannabis may reduce internal motivation, external motivational factors in cannabis users still have shown to not be affected by the cannabis use. And the new research also has shown that mental illness may be a larger part than we think of the observable demotivational behaviors that we can see in cannabis, especially heavier cannabis users. So, statistics on cannabis use. Currently, as of 2017, college cannabis use has been as high as since 1987. 38% of full-time students aged 19 through 22 have admitted to using it in the last year. 21% of full-time students have reported using it in the last month, and 4.4% of full-time students have reported using cannabis daily or almost every day. So, findings. Overall, cannabis in college does not seem to have a statistically significant effect on academics. However, it did seem to affect certain groups. And one of these seemed to have a greater effect on academics of low achievers as compared to high achievers. And also it seemed to have a statistically significant effect on students enrolled in quantitative or STEM work as opposed to non-STEM qualitative work. And then also cannabis use frequency is a huge factor in determining how it affects academics. Heavier cannabis use seems to have the largest impact on academic performance, and moderate to no cannabis use. There does not seem to be any conclusive evidence that has a statistically significant effect on academics, performance, and involvement. So, in conclusion, frequency of cannabis use is an essential factor in finding out how the drug affects academic performance for college students. Only heavy users of cannabis seems to have a definite negative correlation between heavy cannabis use and grades and productivity. And then cannabis, as I stated before, affects two subgroups especially, low achievers and students of STEM courses. This is likely due to less class attendance, which can be attributed perhaps to the demotivational aspects of cannabis use on the brain. And then students enrolled in STEM coursework might be more affected because cannabis has an effect on the cognition of numerical logic and quantitative type thinking. So some policy recommendations for cannabis on college campuses. I think that college campus policy should be very similar to that of alcohol policy. There's no evidence to suggest that other than heavy use, cannabis has a negative impact on college students' academics, but that can go with any drug. Heavy abuse and use of any drug will have that type of impact, including alcohol. Resources. For this reason, resources should be dedicated towards educating and to continue to educate college students on cannabis. And also, more resources should be dedicated to helping heavy users or also users with cannabis use disorder, which will be the most impacted on college campuses.